Hello and welcome to Fish and Forage. My name is Zach and this is episode 2 of the Fish of 1,000 Casts. So on this series, I'm going through the 2019-2020 Winter Steelhead season on my quest to catch as many awesome steelhead as I can. The first episode was really early. This episode, the water is actually looking really good. We just had a bunch of rain, so the river's raised up. Now they're kind of lowering down, so this is prime time for winter steelhead. It is a little early in the year, but I'm hoping that we can get lucky. And if not, just like last time, I do have a how-to to show you guys. We're gonna go fishing on the river. We've already been to a couple spots. We're gonna go to a couple more. And today's focus is one of my favorite ways to catch fish, the inline spinner. Oh yeah. Stick with me. We're gonna take a couple casts and we're gonna jump into a tutorial. Ooh. And hopefully we can pull a fish in. So many salmon carcasses just stuck up in these reeds. Hey look, I tagged one. 7730. I don't know what that means. Oh, maybe they're tagging the carcasses. It's a salmon graveyard. Oh, can I walk across here is the question. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Ooh. We can walk across here. I don't think I mentioned it before, but waders, guys. If you don't have a pair of waders and you're a bank fisherman and you're going for these steelhead and salmon, get yourself a pair of waders. It opens up so much water that you would normally not be able to get to because you get soaking wet. And you don't need anything crazy. Like, there's some budget ones that will work great. You know, they may not last you as long as the nicer ones, but they'll still get you in the water, they'll still keep you dry, and it's a huge difference. Huge difference. Alrighty guys, let's get into the tutorial. So one of my favorite ways to fish for salmon or steelhead has been the inline spinner. This is a Blue Fox Vibrax number 4. This is one of my favorite spinners overall, this blue color. You can see this one's a little beat up. I like blue or silver because blue turns into silver, so that works out well. So the rod itself isn't as important with spinner fishing, at least in my opinion. Obviously you need a rod that can handle salmon and steelhead, so I recommend at least something that can handle, 8 to 12 or 8 to 15 pounds, because you want to make sure that that fish isn't going to break your rod. Other than that, I haven't really found a very specific rod that is like stands out more than the others. Like, I've tied a spinner onto this rod, I've tied a spinner onto my float rod. They both work great. There's no real huge downside. I mean, I guess there's probably a little bit more range in casting with the longer rods, but that's not really killer. I use this one because this is just my second salmon steelhead rod, and it's very convenient to have 2 rods because I don't have to retie all the time. So I have my long float rod, which I showed you in the last video, and then I have this rod, which just so happens to be my twitching rod. But when I'm not twitching, I always have a spinner or a spoon on it, and that way if I'm finding that drifting isn't very effective, instead of having to cut my line, retie on this bumper, retie on the spinner, I can just set down the other rod, pick up this one, and just immediately start fishing again. So that's just a tip in general. Having multiple rods is really helpful. It saves you a lot of time so you don't have to retie. Obviously, if your budget's constrained, not a big deal. I would stick with one float rod size rod. If I had to choose one, I would do that one, just because it is a lot better for float and it works with spinners just fine. So the setup I have is very simple. The rod I'm using is a Lamiglass 7'9" 8 to 15 pound twitching rod. On that rod, I have the Akuma Kmar. Let's see if I can get that name in there. In the size C30? Yeah, C30. Anything size 25 to 45 is great. It'll work perfect. On that reel, I have, again, that same 30-pound high-vis braid. This is really helpful because it doesn't have as much give as mono or fluoro, and I can see it in the water just like with drifting. I like being able to see where it's going and where it's moving in the water, so that's really helpful. On that braid, that high-vis braid, I used a Crazy Alberto knot, just that tiny little knot, It's called a crazy Alberto knot, or an Alberto knot. I'm not sure what the exact one is. There we go. And then I have this, in this case, it's a 15-pound bumper. And it's about 5 feet long right now, all the way down to the spinner itself. And this is just an improved clinch knot, or whatever your favorite knot is. That'll work great for it. And that's it. That's how simple it is. The crazy Alberto knot is not the easiest knot to tie, but it's also really handy. It's great for tying braid to mono or braid to fluoro, so I would recommend learning it anyway. But that's it. That's the whole setup. Super simple. You can cut off this spinner. You can tie on another spinner. You can tie on a spoon. You can tie on all sorts of things. If you really wanted to, you could tie on a twitching jig. We'll have another video on that next season. But very versatile, very awesome. Really quick to switch out. Some people even put a swivel. So they put like a snap swivel instead of that knot. And instead of tying a knot each time, they just pop it off and snap the next lure on to that swivel, which probably isn't that bad. I don't like it because it just kind of adds a little weird thing on the front of the spinner, which I feel like maybe I'm crazy, but maybe the fish see it. I don't know. Either way, it'll probably work. Oh, and also, I guess I will specify on my spinners, or most of my spinners, I like to replace the treble hook with, this is a size 4 Siwash hook. And this seems to work really well. We have a couple rivers around here that you can't have treble hooks. So they come with their own not built-in, but they come with their own single hook in the packaging for these blue foxes. But I got these aftermarket ones, the Siwash ones, and I like these a lot, so up to you. The reason I like spinner fishing so much is because it's a great way to cover water. It's very active. You're not sitting and waiting, you're not letting it drift, it's not slow. You're constantly casting, you're constantly retrieving, and the fish, when they do see it, will bite it very aggressively. Like, you will have no question if you got a fish on. Whereas bobber fishing, it's great to see the bobber downs and everything, but there's definitely like an actual tangible thing you're missing when you're feeling that hook actually just get taken immediately by the fish. It's an aggression bite, which is a lot of fun. But fishing, this is really easy. So I'm gonna put you on the chest cam again, and then we're gonna get on the river and I'll show you exactly what I'm doing so you can come out here with your own spinner setup and start catching fish. Anyway guys, on the chest cam, let's do this. So the first step in learning where to fish spinners, or how to fish spinners, is looking for the right kind of water. So ideally you want walking speed water that's 3 to 6 feet deep. That's kind of like the quote unquote steelhead water. Now this is a little bit fast. I was actually walking next to it, and it's just like a little bit faster than like walking speed, so it's not like not gonna have fish, but it's definitely just slightly faster than ideal. So the benefit for these spinners is that you can cover a lot of water really fast. The way that these work is you cast out across the river. Either in like a 45-degree cone, you can cast 45 degrees up, 45 degrees down, or anywhere in between to start your cast. And then from there, it'll actually use the current and drift down, essentially spin and swing out towards you as it gets pulled down the river. So the only thing you are doing is making sure it doesn't touch the bottom and making sure that the spinner is spinning. And you'll feel it in the rod tip. You'll feel it go thump, 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 as it's going through the water. And that's how you know that this thing's spinning. If you don't feel that, then it might be caught on a leaf. You might not be reeling it fast enough. So that's the indication that you're reeling as fast as you need to is when you feel that thump, thump, thump. You should aim to reel it as little as possible. So as slow as you can reel while still keeping that spinner spinning and keeping it off of the bottom, the better. Let's go ahead and cast. Now in this case, I'm just gonna cast 90 degrees across, just as far as I can get it in this case. And then you see it's already getting carried down. I'm reeling in the slack and I feel it in the tip of the rod, feeling it thump. And now as it goes down, the current will start taking it, and then it'll start swinging towards me, and it'll actually require me to reel a lot less. So when it starts getting pulled by the current and swinging down towards you, you'll feel it pull more, and that's when you know you don't have to reel as much. You can actually, like right now, it's spinning and moving towards the bank and swinging towards me, but I can feel the spinner working, so I don't need to actually reel. Now when it gets all the way down below me, I'm gonna have to start reeling it again, because then the current won't be carrying it as fast. So what I recommend doing when you find new water is do the near, middle, far technique that I mentioned before. So start out cast near, like on the close edge of the current, and then do a cast, and then the next cast do the middle, and then let it swing and complete that cast, and then finally do the far side as far as you can get, and then complete that cast. Let it swing down all the way low. And also you can vary that by starting 45 degrees up. You can start at 45 degrees down. A lot of times these fish are hunkered down and they're hiding, and they're not really like going to move around too much. So it's going to depend on you putting the spinner in front of the fish in order to get that bite. And they can be anywhere. So I've cast spinners and pulled steelhead off of the bank before. Literally, they were up against the far bank and quite literally touching the grass. And I cast in front of them and watched their back turn and chase that spinner out. So it's all a matter of just getting the spinner right in front of the fish at the right depth and start spinning. And that's really all there is to it. If you know that you're fishing in deeper water, you can let it sink. So if I cast, I know it's a little deeper, I can let it sink a little bit before reeling, and that way it gets that spinner into the lower third of the water column, which is kind of that sweet spot. You'll also sometimes feel it bump on the bottom, which isn't a bad thing. If you notice it bumping on the bottom a lot, you can kind of pick up your reel speed and help pull that spinner off the bottom. But when it drags on the bottom a little bit, it actually is not bad. They might grab it right off the bottom there if they put it in front of them. Now another thing is controlling the depth as you're reeling. So in this fast water, it's kind of tough because it's pulling on it as much as it's going to anyway. If you're in a little bit slower water, you can use your rod tip to affect how deep this lure is going to be spinning. So if I keep it low to the water like this, then that spinner is going to stay lower in the water column. If I pull it up above me, then that spinner is going to move up in the water column as it spins. And then right in the middle, it's going to kind of be the middle ground there. So if you know that you want to try to get deep, let it sink a little bit, keep your rod tip low, let that spinner get to the bottom before you start reeling. And then again, as you start reeling, as long as you feel that spinner just thumping on there, it's just as little as possible, then you know you're reeling at the right speed. If you reel too fast, it'll pull that spinner up out of the zone. And if you reel too slow, it'll fall into the rocks and potentially get snagged. So you got to be careful with it as you're reeling. Let's do a near, middle, far. So for near, I'd probably cast just kind of swing it over there right as it gets to that current. Start reeling it pretty quick because I know it's not too deep here. And as it swings down, I'm reeling slower and slower because I feel that spinner working, and I don't want it to spin any more than I need to, because if I reel it too fast, it'll start coming up and it'll hit the surface. As it gets down below me, I can kind of reel it in and restart that swing. You really want the trigger that I found, at least, is that spinner needs to be moving downstream into their face. So you want that spinner to be spinning like crazy and then just kind of head right for their face. So that's where that swing comes in, where you have that lure that's spinning and it's going downstream and it's covering a lot of water and potentially putting itself in front of a lot of fish. So let's do that the mid, right in the middle there. Let it sink a little bit. Start reeling. Oh, got caught on the bottom a little bit. So that's how you know if you're reeling a little too slow, is if you feel it get caught on the bottom. That way you just know that next time, start reeling a little faster. And again, all I'm doing is just reeling it just enough to keep that spinner working. Even if it's the current is doing it on its own, I don't need to reel at all. As long as that spinner is spinning, then we're golden. That's what we want. Let it swing all the way down, reel it back in. Now let's try a far cast. So I'm just going to bomb this one out as far as I can. And then I'm going to start reeling. If I had a preference of which angle to cast at, I would say maybe like 10 or 15 degrees upriver. When you cast upriver, it gives the spinner a couple seconds to drift down, and it gives it kind of like this moment where there's almost like a dead drift as it comes to 90 degrees. And that I've found a couple bites come on that dead drift where, the spinner's sinking, it's just getting into the zone, and you just start reeling in it, and then, that fish will strike it. Whereas if you cast just directly across, it doesn't have as much time to just dead drift because you're going to start reeling it sooner, or even further down, then that current is just going to start picking it up without any say from you at all. So that 10 to 15 degrees upriver, I kind of like that a lot. Gives it that almost like that dead drift moment. But I would say spend you know, 10 or 15 minutes at a hole, cast near, middle, far, cast different speeds, let it sink for a little bit, you know, reel it faster. You're basically just using this to cover water. And the way that you're gonna get bites, this is gonna entice aggression bites. So if there's a fish, generally speaking, if there's a fish in the hole and you cover it good enough and you put that spinner in front of it, you know, just to where it wants it, it will strike it. So if you are fishing a hole with a spinner for more than, you know, 15 or 20 minutes and you've covered all the water, then it's time to move on. This is definitely a search and hunting style of lure. With that said, I have been here for about 10 or 15 minutes, so I'm gonna take a couple more casts. So if you don't catch anything here, you know, move to the next hole, move down 20 to 40 feet, try again. You know, you might, the way that that fish lay, you might just move 20 feet down, cast in a similar area, and it just so happens that it drifts right in front of a steelhead who's actually interested, and boom, fish on, you know. You wanna make sure you're thorough with these fishing techniques. So let's go ahead and move down to the next spot, give it a shot. Like I mentioned before, you know, I'm not an expert. I'm not a professional fisherman or anything. This is just kind of my experience, how I've had success, and I kind of want to pass that on to you guys. So if you see that I'm doing something weird, or if you have a suggestion for me, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your suggestion. Like even the last video, I learned a ton about drift fishing. I needed to get, you know, smaller hooks. My leader was a little short. I needed to try out the floatant on my braided line to keep it above the water. I learned a lot. Like, it was awesome. So if you have any more advice for me, you know, let me know. And if I taught you anything, let me know too. Like, I just love to hear from you, really. Comments are great. I love to hear from people and their fishing stories and all their fishing techniques, and it's great. I love the feedback, so I appreciate that. Anyway, I'm babbling. I'm gonna put my stuff away. We'll go head down, try another spot. I think I might be upriver more. We'll see, because a bunch of water came in. Maybe pushed a bunch of them up into the upper reaches of this river, so that's where we're gonna give it a shot next. Let's do it. Alrighty guys, we are back upriver. Moved up a little bit to try to maybe chase some fish that got pushed up with that rain. But we're still gonna fish with our spinner setup. Ow! Stabbed myself. Now, one thing I didn't mention before, and this goes back to the water you're gonna look for, is that you want it to be mostly even. And by that I mean you want the current to be the same speed, you know, from one side of the river to the next, mostly. So a lot of times you'll get these channels up in the middle here, where it's fast water in the middle and slower water on each side. And while that's not impossible to use spinners with, the ideal is a constant speed throughout the width of the river. So that's another important point to look for. That's like the primo spinner water, the primo spoon water. You just have to be cognizant as you're reeling in the speed of the water that your spinner is moving through, so you're not pulling it too fast, or you're not pulling it too slow and letting it hit the bottom. So it's kind of like a dance as you go through these different speeds of current. Same exact technique here. I'm going to try the near, middle, far. If the water's clear enough, you can actually see your spinner, which is really nice. You can see it moving in the water. A little flashy bug. Alrighty guys, let's move on up, or down. I think I'll go down. See you in a moment. Well, in a little bit, but thanks to YouTube magic, it'll be like, bling! We have made it to the last spot. Tried to toss the spinner through here a couple times. It's a very beautiful waterfall. I like this area. It's a good backdrop. Put some drifts through here. Maybe make some magic happen late day. Ooh, that was a bad cast. Well, let's recast that one. Thank you guys so much for watching. This was episode 2 of the 2019-2020 Fish of 1,000 Cast series, where I am going after winter steelhead in the Pacific Northwest. We were unfortunately skunked today, but I'm not too surprised. The rivers were definitely in better condition. They had just blown out, and then they're on the downswing of that now. So we had a better chance today, but it's still pretty early in the season, so I'm not too surprised that we didn't catch anything. but I'm going to be doing these as much as possible. I got a lot of rivers to cover, a lot of places to try fishing. I got more techniques to show you guys, so if you like the tutorials in the middle of these, you know, let me know. I want to know if they're helpful for you. I want to know if you catch fish with all this stuff you're learning here. If you have any feedback, if you have any advice for me, like if I'm doing something really weird, or if you have a better way to do it, I hope that I can teach you guys some, and then, you know, in turn you guys can help teach me, and we can all become better fishermen, catch more beautiful fish, and have more fun. But anyway, guys, I'm gonna head out. I got some Christmas stuff to take care of. Merry Christmas to you guys. This will actually be way later, but Merry post-Christmas, whatever. Definitely don't forget to subscribe, comment below, and give me a like. Give me that thumbs up button there. All these things are great. They all help me out. They help my YouTube channel out, so I do appreciate it. But until next time, you guys keep fishing, and I'll keep fishing. Whatcha?